Do you have a dime in your pocket right now? Don't spend it yet. Some dimes that look completely ordinary can hide valuable mint errors that most people never notice. Check yours carefully, because the smallest detail could make a huge difference. If you find this dime, don't throw it back into your change. Turn it over, check the details, and inspect the surface carefully. One rare feature could transform an ordinary 10-cent coin into a highly desirable collector's piece. You might be holding a hidden treasure. If you have a 1986 Washington quarter sitting in your collection, an old coin jar, or even hiding in your spare change, do not spend it until you take a very close look, because one tiny detail could make this ordinary-looking 25-cent coin much more interesting to collectors. And if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world, at least if your example has the right combination of condition, strike, or a genuine minting error. The 1986 Washington quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and according to PCGS, 551,199,333 examples were produced. The standard coin weighs 5.67 grams, measures 24.30 millimeters across, has a reeded edge, and is made from 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. That enormous mintage means the date itself does not make every 1986 quarter rare. Most circulated examples are ordinary coins, but that does not mean you should ignore them. The exciting part begins when you discover an example that has survived in extraordinary condition or contains a genuine mint error. And this is exactly why coin collectors continue checking old quarters. Sometimes the difference between an ordinary coin and a valuable collectible is hidden in details that most people never notice. Start by looking at the front of your coin. You should see the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. The 1986 quarter's documented $2,880 record came from a specific coin graded MS-67 and sold at heritage auctions. That does not mean every MS-67 coin will necessarily sell for exactly the same amount today. Auction prices can change depending on market conditions, appeal, certification, buyer competition, and the circumstances of the sale. It also does not mean a circulated quarter is worth anywhere near that amount. Every coin must be evaluated individually. This is one of the most important things to remember when watching rare coin videos online. A headline might say, "This quarter is worth thousands." But the real question is, which quarter? The date alone is not enough. The mint mark alone is not enough. Even the condition alone may not be enough. You need the complete combination of characteristics. Now look again at your 1986 quarter. Is it heavily worn? If yes, it is probably an ordinary circulated example. Is it lightly circulated with some remaining detail? It may have modest collector interest. Is it uncirculated with strong luster and minimal marks? Now you have something more interesting. Do not assume it is worth $80,000. Do not assume it is worthless either. Find out what you actually have. Check the condition. Check the mint mark. Look for genuine errors. Compare it with reliable examples. And if it appears exceptional, get it professionally evaluated. Remember that PCGS currently lists the regular 1986 issues auction record at $2,880 in MS-67. That is a real documented auction result, and it gives you a much better starting point than an unsupported internet claim. The lesson is simple. A common coin can become valuable when it becomes uncommon in condition or characteristics. And that is why you should never judge your 1986 quarter simply by looking at its face value. Before you spend it, inspect it. Before you clean it, protect it. Before you sell it, research it. And before you believe a huge valuation, verify the auction evidence. If you truly have an unusual 1986 quarter, you may have a fascinating collectible hiding in plain sight. And if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world, especially if your example turns out to be one of those exceptional coins that collectors have been searching for. So go back through your old coin jars, your inherited collections, your drawers, and your spare change. Look for the 1986 Washington quarter. Check the portrait. Check the lettering. Check the date. Check the P mint mark. Check the reverse eagle. Check the rim. Check the edge. If you have a 1972 Washington quarter sitting in your collection, an old coin jar, or even somewhere in your spare change, do not spend it before you take a closer look, because you might be holding something far more interesting than an ordinary 25-cent coin. And if your coin has an unusual minting error, extraordinary condition, or a rare combination of characteristics, you could be looking at a coin that collectors would be willing to examine very carefully. In fact, some people claim that a coin like this could be worth an unbelievable $80,000. But before you get excited, you need to understand exactly what makes a 1972D quarter valuable and what separates an ordinary example from a truly exceptional one. So if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world. Or at least you may have a coin worth investigating. The 1972D Washington quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, and the United States Mint produced more than 311 million examples that year. PCGS lists the standard coin at 5.67 grams, 24.30 millimeters in diameter, with a copper-nickel outer layer over a pure copper center. That huge production number tells us something very important. The date and the D Mint mark alone do not make this quarter an $80,000 rarity. Most circulated examples are ordinary coins and are generally worth around face value, while coins in exceptional condition can bring significantly more. But this is exactly where the story becomes fascinating, because collectors are not simply looking at the year printed on a coin. They are looking at condition, strike quality, surface preservation, varieties, errors, color, luster, and certification. Turn the coin over in your hand and begin with the obverse. You should see the familiar portrait of George Washington facing left. Around him are the words "Liberty" and "I in God We Trust," along with the date. The design was created by John Flanagan and became one of the most recognizable designs in American coinage. Now look carefully near the lower right area of the obverse. That small letter D is extremely important because it identifies the Denver Mint. A 1972D quarter without the expected characteristics of a Denver issue deserves closer examination. But remember, simply having a D does not automatically make the coin rare. Millions of these coins were made. What matters is what else you can find. Start with the surfaces. Hold the coin under a bright light and slowly tilt it from side to side. You are looking for original mint luster, not artificial shine. A coin that has been heavily circulated will normally show wear on Washington's hair, cheek, jaw, and the highest points of the design. Small scratches, dents, contact marks, and discoloration can also reduce collector interest. But a coin with sharp details, strong luster, and very few marks can become much more desirable. This is why condition is so important in coin collecting. Two coins with exactly the same date and mint mark can have dramatically different values because one survived decades in circulation while the other remained almost untouched. And this is where high-grade coins enter the story. The finest known examples can attract serious attention from collectors, especially when they are professionally graded. PCGS records an auction result of $3,055 for a 1972D Washington quarter graded MS-68, sold through Heritage Auctions in January 2014. That is an important real-world example because it demonstrates how dramatically condition can change the value of an otherwise common coin. Imagine finding a quarter that looks almost untouched after more than 5 decades. That is the kind of discovery that makes collectors stop and take another look. But there is something else you need to understand. When you hear stories about an ordinary-looking quarter being worth $80,000, you should never assume that every coin with the same date is worth that amount. The biggest values in numismatics usually come from extraordinary rarity, major mint errors, extremely high grades, or a combination of factors. An $80,000 figure should therefore be treated as a dramatic possibility associated with an exceptional specimen, not as the normal value of a 1972D quarter. In fact, the documented auction record from PCGS for the standard 1972D issue is thousands of dollars, not $80,000. This distinction is extremely important if you are checking coins at home. You do not want to confuse an internet claim with a verified auction result. Instead, learn how professional collectors actually evaluate these coins. First, inspect the date. Make sure all 4 digits are clearly visible and that the coin has not been altered. Next, locate the D Mint mark and compare its appearance with known examples. Then examine the entire coin for unusual features. Look for doubling around the lettering, unusual spacing, distorted lettering, missing details, off-center striking, broad strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, die clashes, or other signs that something unusual happened during production. Be careful, though, because not every strange-looking mark is a mint error. Damage that happens after the coin leaves the mint can create scratches, flattening, discoloration, or distorted areas that may look unusual but have little collector value. A genuine mint error is different because it results from something going wrong during the manufacturing process. That is why authentication matters. If you believe your 1972D quarter has a major error, do not clean it, polish it, scrape it, or attempt to repair it. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may reduce collector interest. Handle the coin by its edges and place it in a proper holder. If the coin appears especially unusual or exceptionally well preserved, professional grading can provide an independent assessment. Now let's talk about the reverse. You should see the American eagle with its wings spread, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and $quarter. Look closely at the eagle's feathers and the surrounding lettering. On a high-grade coin, these details can remain remarkably sharp. On a circulated example, the highest points can become smooth and lose definition. Again, this is why two identical dates can have completely different collector appeal. A quarter that spent years moving through cash registers, pockets, vending machines, and drawers may have countless contact marks. A quarter that was stored carefully from the beginning can preserve much more of its original appearance. And when a coin approaches the highest grades, even tiny marks can make a major difference. This is one reason professional grading is so important at the top end of the market. Collectors want confidence that the coin's condition has been evaluated consistently. They also want protection against altered or counterfeit coins. Now imagine that you open an old collection and discover several 1972D quarters. At first glance, they may all look identical. But under magnification, one could have stronger luster. Another could have a better strike. One could have unusual doubling. Another might have a dramatic off-center strike. One could simply be worn and ordinary. This is how a simple coin hunt becomes a treasure hunt. The goal is not to assume every coin is valuable. The goal is to identify the one that is different. And if you discover a genuine major error or an extremely high-grade example, that is when the coin can become much more interesting to the market. There is another important point about the 1972D quarter. It is not a silver quarter. The standard issue has a copper-nickel composition with a copper core, unlike the 90% silver Washington quarters produced before 1965. PCGS lists the 1972D composition as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. So if someone tells you that every 1972D quarter is valuable because it contains silver, that information is incorrect. The value story here is about condition, errors, varieties, and collector demand, not silver content. This is also why you should learn to identify the edge. A normal copper-nickel-clad quarter will show a distinctive layered appearance along the edge, with the copper core visible between the outer layers. If you see something that looks completely different, take a closer look. But once again, unusual appearance does not automatically mean rarity. Sometimes environmental damage or chemical exposure can alter the appearance of a coin. If two or more serious buyers desperately want the same coin, competition can push the final price higher than expected. That is why auction results are so important in numismatics. An auction record represents what buyers actually paid for a specific specimen under specific circumstances. It does not mean every similar coin will automatically sell for the same amount. So when you see an exciting value attached to a coin online, always ask one simple question. Was that price actually achieved by a documented sale? And was the coin identical in date, mint mark, variety, error, and grade? That question can save you from believing exaggerated claims. It can also help you recognize a genuinely important discovery. If you are checking your own 1972D quarter right now, take your time. Do not rush. Find a clean surface and use good lighting. Look at the obverse first. Check the date. Check the D mint mark. Examine Washington's portrait. Look at the lettering. Then flip the coin over and inspect the eagle, lettering, rim, and edge. Use a magnifying glass if you have one, but avoid touching the surfaces unnecessarily. Compare what you see with photographs from reputable numismatic references. If something appears genuinely unusual, document it with clear photographs before doing anything else. And most importantly, never clean the coin. A coin that looks dirty to you may actually have an original surface that collectors value. Polishing can create unnatural lines and permanently reduce its appeal. If your coin appears to be a spectacular uncirculated example, professional certification may be worth considering. A certified grade can help establish exactly where the coin sits on the grading scale and can make it easier for buyers to evaluate the piece. This is particularly important if you believe you have one of the finest examples known. Remember the MS-68 auction result, $3,055 for a regular 1972 D quarter. That is already a remarkable price compared with the 25-cent face value, but it required an exceptional grade. This shows you why condition matters so much. If you have a 1979 Washington quarter, stop for a moment before spending it, because that ordinary-looking 25-cent coin could contain a detail that collectors are searching for. And if your example is an exceptionally rare error or an extraordinary high-grade specimen, you may have something much more interesting than face value. So if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world, or at least you could be if you discover the right characteristics. The 1979 Washington quarter is especially interesting because hundreds of millions were produced, yet certain varieties, errors, and superbly preserved examples can attract serious collector attention. The Denver Mint produced 489,789,780 regular strike 1979 D quarters, while Philadelphia's no mint mark production totaled 515,708,000, according to PCGS. That means the date alone does not make a normal 1979 quarter rare, and this is something every collector needs to understand. Most circulated examples are worth approximately their face value, but the story changes when you find a coin with an unusual minting error, a recognized variety, or an exceptional grade. So take your 1979 quarter and look closely at both sides. On the front, you will see George Washington facing left, with Liberty above his portrait, "In God We Trust" beside him, and the date below. Look carefully near the lower right area of Washington's portrait. Depending on the issue, you may find a D mint mark, or you may find no mint mark at all. Do not automatically assume that a 1979 quarter without a mint mark is a rare error. In 1979, Philadelphia quarters normally had no mint mark, and PCGS notes that some no mint mark production also came from West Point during this period. This is one of the biggest mistakes beginners make when searching their change. They find a 1979 quarter without a mint mark and immediately assume they have discovered a missing mint mark error. In reality, a regular 1979 Philadelphia issue is supposed to have no mint mark. But that does not mean every 1979 no mint mark quarter is worthless. Condition still matters, and unusual varieties and errors can change the story completely. Now look at the surface of your coin. Does Washington's cheek look smooth and clean, or does it have scratches and contact marks? Are the details in his hair sharply defined? Does the coin still show strong original mint luster? Turn it under a light and watch how the surface reflects. A genuinely uncirculated coin can have a much different appearance from one that has spent decades in circulation. And when you reach the highest grades, tiny imperfections can make an enormous difference. This is why professional grading is so important in the rare coin market. A perfect-looking coin at home may receive a different grade under professional examination, while an extraordinary specimen can become highly desirable once authenticated and certified. Now let's talk about the 1979 D quarter specifically. The Denver issue carries the D mint mark and was produced in enormous quantities. PCGS lists its weight at 5.67 grams, its diameter at 24.30 millimeters, and its composition as 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. This means the normal 1979 D quarter is not a silver quarter. If someone tells you that every 1979 quarter contains silver and is automatically worth a large amount, that is incorrect. The value comes from other factors such as condition, rarity, errors, and collector demand. And this is where things get exciting. PCGS records an auction result of $1,078 for a 1979 D Washington quarter graded MS-67, sold at Great Collections on August 17, 2014. Think about that for a moment. The coin has a face value of only 25 cents, yet an exceptional certified specimen brought more than $1,000 at auction. That is an enormous difference, and it demonstrates why you should never judge a coin only by its face value. But there is an important lesson here. That $1,078 result was not for an ordinary circulated quarter. It was for a professionally graded MS-67 specimen. A worn 1979D quarter is an entirely different coin in the eyes of collectors. So if you have one, examine the condition before getting excited about a huge price. Now flip your coin over. The reverse shows the American eagle with its wings spread, surrounded by United States of America, E pluribus unum, and quarter dollar. Examine the eagle's feathers, the lettering, and the rim. Look for unusual doubling, strange shapes, missing details, cracks, chips, or other characteristics that appear to be part of the original strike. But be extremely careful when identifying errors. A scratch created after the coin left the mint is not automatically a valuable mint error. A dent from circulation is not a rare variety. A flattened area caused by another coin hitting it is not necessarily a double die. Genuine mint errors happen during production, and determining whether something is a true error often requires experience and comparison with authenticated examples. One of the most exciting possibilities when searching 1979 quarters is a double die. A genuine double die can show noticeable separation or doubling on parts of the design, depending on the specific variety. Collectors pay close attention to areas such as Liberty, the date, and other lettering. But online searches can be misleading because machine doubling, die wear, scratches, and damage can sometimes look like doubling to an inexperienced collector. That is why you should never assume that every blurry letter is a rare double die. If your coin has dramatic, consistent doubling that appears to be part of the original design, photograph it clearly and have it examined by someone knowledgeable. Another thing to inspect is the rim. A normal quarter should have a properly formed circular rim and reeded edge. If the coin appears unusually wide, lacks part of the reeded edge, or has an obvious off-center strike, you may be looking at a minting error. Major errors can be much more interesting to collectors than minor imperfections. But again, authentication is critical. The internet is full of photographs of strange-looking coins, and many of those coins turn out to have post-mint damage. This is why professional evaluation can protect you from making an expensive mistake. Now imagine finding a 1979 quarter that has survived more than 4 decades with almost no visible marks. You place it under a light, rotate it slowly, and the original luster moves across the surface. Washington's portrait is sharply struck. The reverse details are crisp. The rims are clean. There are very few contact marks. Suddenly, your ordinary quarter becomes a potential condition rarity. This is the kind of discovery that makes collectors search through old jars, inherited collections, rolls of coins, and spare change. The exciting part is not believing every quarter is worth a fortune. The exciting part is knowing that exceptional examples can be dramatically more valuable than ordinary ones. This is why I always say, if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world, but only if you know what to look for. Now let's address the headline number that gets collectors excited. $80,000. Could a normal 1979 quarter automatically be worth $80,000? Absolutely not. There is no basis for saying that every 1979 Washington quarter is worth $80,000. In fact, the documented PCGS auction record for the regular 1979D issue is $1,078 in MS-67. So if you have a circulated 1979 quarter in your pocket, do not expect an $80,000 payday. But the possibility of a spectacular error or an extraordinary specimen is what makes the search worthwhile. If someone claims that a particular 1979 quarter sold for $80,000, ask for the exact auction record. Ask for the grade. Ask whether it was a regular strike or an error. Ask what mint mark it had. Ask whether the coin was authenticated by a recognized grading service. Those questions separate legitimate numismatic information from exaggerated internet claims. Auction prices are especially important because an auction shows what a buyer actually paid for a particular coin under particular circumstances. For example, the $1,078 PCGS auction record for the 1979 DMS67 was achieved by a specific certified coin at a specific auction. It does not mean every 1979 D quarter is worth $1,078. This distinction is incredibly important. Coin values are not fixed simply by the date. Condition and rarity can change everything. Now let's imagine you have five 1979 quarters in front of you. The first is heavily worn. The second has scratches across Washington's face. The third has dull surfaces and little remaining detail. The fourth looks surprisingly clean. The fifth looks almost untouched and has strong luster. Which one would you investigate first? Obviously, the fifth coin. Then you would compare it carefully with known high-grade examples. This is the mindset of a serious collector. You do not need to become an expert overnight. You simply need to learn how to notice differences. Start with the date. Check the mint mark. Study the surfaces. Examine the design. Inspect the rim. Look at the edge. Then compare the coin with trusted references. If you believe you have something unusual, preserve. If you have a 1970 Washington quarter, stop before you spend it, because this small 25-cent coin could be much more interesting than it looks. Most examples are ordinary circulated coins, but certain varieties, errors, and exceptionally preserved specimens can attract serious attention from collectors. So if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world, at least if you discover the right characteristics hiding on its surface. The 1970 Washington quarter is especially interesting because it comes from an important period in American coinage, when the United States Mint was producing clad quarters rather than the older 90% silver quarters. That means a normal 1970 quarter is not a silver quarter, but that does not mean every example is worthless. In fact, the real excitement begins when you start examining the details. Look at the front of the coin and you will see George Washington facing left, with Liberty above him, "In God We Trust" beside his portrait, and the date below. Depending on where the coin was produced, you may see a D mint mark for Denver, an S for San Francisco proof issues, or no mint mark on Philadelphia circulation strikes. That tiny mint mark can help identify the coin, but it is only the beginning. The first thing you should do is examine the condition. Hold the coin under a good light and slowly tilt it from side to side. Look at Washington's cheek, hair, jaw, and neck. Are the details worn smooth? Are there scratches across the surface? Does the coin have dull, dirty-looking areas? Or does it still have strong original mint luster and sharp details? Condition is one of the biggest factors in determining collector value. A heavily circulated quarter may be worth little more than its face value, while an exceptional uncirculated specimen can be worth dramatically more. And this is where the story becomes exciting for anyone searching through old coins. Imagine finding a quarter that has been sitting untouched for decades. You pick it up and immediately notice that the surfaces are unusually clean. Washington's portrait is sharply defined. The lettering is crisp. The reverse looks fresh. There is still attractive mint luster across the fields. Suddenly, that quarter deserves a much closer examination. But there is another reason you should inspect a 1970 quarter carefully: mint errors. During the striking process, things can occasionally go wrong. A coin may be struck off-center, struck on an incorrect planchet, show a major die error, or display another unusual characteristic. Genuine mint errors can be highly collectible, especially when the error is dramatic and easy to authenticate. But you need to be careful because damage can look like an error. A scratch is not automatically a mint error. A dent is not automatically rare. A flattened area can be caused by circulation. Even unusual-looking doubling can sometimes be machine doubling rather than a valuable doubled die. So if you see something strange, do not immediately assume you have discovered a fortune. Instead, compare your coin with reliable references and consider professional authentication. Now turn the coin over. The reverse shows the familiar American eagle with its wings spread. Around it are United States of America, E pluribus unum, and quarter dollar. Look carefully at the eagle's feathers. Check the lettering. Examine the rim. Then inspect the edge. A normal clad quarter should have a distinctive copper-colored center visible along the edge between the outer layers. If the edge looks completely different, that is something worth investigating. But again, unusual appearance does not automatically mean a valuable error. Environmental exposure, chemical reactions, or damage can alter the appearance of a coin after it leaves the mint. This is why experienced collectors learn to distinguish mint-made characteristics from post-mint damage. The 1970 quarter also has an important historical connection to the transition away from silver coinage. The United States had already stopped producing regular 90% silver quarters after 1964, and by 1970 the standard quarter was a copper-nickel-clad coin. So if someone tells you that every 1970 quarter contains valuable silver, Do not believe that claim. A normal 1970 quarter is not valuable because of silver content. Its potential collector value comes from its condition, variety, error status, rarity, and demand. Now let's talk about something that often appears in sensational coin videos. Enormous values like $80,000. You may hear claims that a 1970 quarter can be worth $80,000, but you should never assume that every coin from this year is worth anywhere close to that amount. A normal circulated 1970 quarter is not an $80,000 coin. If a particular example reached an extraordinary price at auction, there would need to be a specific reason, such as an exceptionally rare error, an unusual planchet, a spectacular variety, or an extremely high certified grade. That is why auction records matter. A real auction result refers to a specific coin with a specific grade and specific characteristics. It does not mean every coin carrying the same date suddenly has the same value. If someone tells you that a 1970 quarter sold for $80,000, ask for the exact auction record. Ask what mint mark it had. Ask what grade it received. Ask whether it was an error. Ask what made it different from millions of ordinary quarters. Without those details, the headline price is meaningless. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone getting started in coin collecting. Never judge a coin only by its date. Never judge it only by its mint mark. And never believe a huge value claim without checking the evidence. Instead, learn how to identify the features that make a coin genuinely unusual. Start with the date. Then check the mint mark. Examine the surfaces. Look for signs of wear. Look for unusual doubling. Check the lettering. Inspect the rim. Examine the edge. Then compare your coin with known examples. You can do most of this at home using good lighting and a magnifying glass. But if your coin looks exceptional, professional evaluation is the safest next step. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is cleaning the coin. Please do not polish your 1970 quarter. Do not use chemicals. Do not rub it aggressively with a cloth. If you notice something that appears to be a major mint error, take clear photographs and seek an expert opinion. Do not sell it immediately to the first person who offers you money. Research first. If the coin is genuinely rare, you want to understand exactly what you have before negotiating a price. This is especially important because the market for rare coins can be very different from the market for ordinary coins. A normal circulated quarter might have little collector premium, while a spectacular error can attract competition from specialists. When a rare coin reaches a major auction, collectors may compete against each other, and that competition can sometimes push the final price much higher than expected. But again, that price belongs to the exact coin being sold. It does not automatically apply to every example of the same date. That distinction is what separates serious numismatic research from internet hype. Now think about how many times a 1970 quarter has been passed from one person to another. It may have been used to buy something at a store. It may have sat in a cash register. It may have been placed in a vending machine. It may have been saved by someone who thought it looked interesting. Decades later, it could end up in your collection. Every coin has a history, and some coins have an even more fascinating story because of the way they were produced. That is what makes coin collecting so enjoyable. You are not just collecting money. You are collecting pieces of history. And when you discover an unusual mint error or an exceptionally preserved example, you may be holding something that very few other collectors have. So if you have this coin, you are the luckiest person in this world, but only if you know what to look for. A 1970 quarter sitting in a drawer may look completely ordinary, but take out a magnifying glass and you may discover details that you never noticed before. Maybe the coin is simply worn and worth 25 cents. Maybe it has beautiful original preservation. Maybe it has an unusual strike. Maybe it has a legitimate error. You will not know until you check. And that is the most important message of this entire video. Do not assume, investigate. If someone tells you your 1970 quarter is worth thousands or even $80,000, ask them to show you the documented evidence. Ask for the auction house, the grade, the certification, and the exact error or variety. A legitimate high-value coin should have a reason behind its value. It should not be valuable simply because someone posted a large number on social media. This approach will help you avoid unrealistic expectations while still allowing you to discover genuine treasures. Now let's imagine the best possible scenario. You find a 1970 quarter that looks nearly perfect. The surfaces are bright and original. The details are sharp. There are very few contact marks. You inspect the coin under magnification and notice a dramatic feature that appears to have happened during striking. You compare it with trusted references and discover that the feature may be a genuine mint error. At that point, you have something worth taking seriously. The next step would be authentication and professional grading. If experts confirm the error and the coin has strong eye appeal, it could become a desirable collectible. If it eventually reaches auction, interested collectors may compete for it. That is where the market determines what the coin is actually worth. Not a thumbnail.